Now we would like to welcome our special guest speaker, Miss Leonie Drummond. Leonie has an associate degree in Indigenous education and has been working in education for almost 2 decades. She currently works at a school in Kiala, and her focus is on educating all Australians about the ideas of social justice and standing up for one another. Significantly, Leonie is also the daughter of Uncle Boydie Turner, the oldest living Yorta Yorta elder and grandson of William Cooper. This makes Leonie the great-granddaughter of William Cooper. Please welcome Leonie to address us.
Thank you so much for that awesome welcome and introduction. It is important that I too acknowledge traditional custodians of the Kulin Nations, the Boon Wurrung people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging for their continuous generosity when sharing knowledge, stories and culture. Their courage in times of vulnerability is so inspiring to me. It gives me hope that one day this country will be one that accepts and values the First Peoples' history with pride and respect. The theme for this year is And Sorry Day, which was yesterday, and National Reconciliation Week, is grounded in truth, walk together with courage. This theme is important for all of us to learn, and in some cases relearn together. Truth-telling is definitely not a part of engendering guilt or shame in both non-Indigenous Australians or in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. It is, of course, about honestly and holistically addressing the past injustices and serving as an endpoint to a history of wrongdoing, allowing for healing so that relationships together can grow stronger. The true history of this country since colonisation, and sometimes still isn't typically taught in our schools. It may have been mentioned from time to time that natives did live here, but true and destructive history was kept well from most of our history books and classrooms. I was taught that Captain Cook discovered Australia, and I was questioned by most people on the street of my nationality. When I was born, I was not regarded as a citizen. As a little girl, I had no idea what any of this meant. But as I got older, it was clear that it was not really cool to be Aboriginal. Well, that was how I felt. Our young people today learning in our schools now have many opportunities, and it is schools like Mount Scopus that lead the way with programs like the Yorta Yorta Be a Hard program. And it is certainly a giant step forward as we ground the truth together for our young people. Engaging in awkward conversations can be challenging, I know, and it takes courage, but when done respectfully and in a genuine way, it can be definitely rewarding. My great-grandfather's story has been part of this truth-telling for the past decade, with much help from my many friends and Dad's friends from our Jewish community all across this nation. They recognise and value the efforts of my great-grandfather when he led the Aboriginal Advancement League to the German consulate in Melbourne in 1938, after hearing about the terrible events of Kristallnacht 4 weeks prior. He felt great empathy for the racially victimised Jews suffering under the Third Reich in faraway Europe. And I often ponder on his story and admire the determination of a man that turned his thoughts for others halfway around the world and tried to address an issue that would have seemed almost impossible to most. During those times, he tirelessly wrote letters after letter to government officials and to the King in faraway England, without very little acknowledgement or change. How did he think that anyone would help with his plight for the Jews? In his early days, he was taught to read and write by missionary Daniel Matthews, and his love for reading and also his learning from the Bible. This was the cornerstone of what William Cooper was able to achieve throughout his life. Education was key, and it enabled him to voice his opinions and express his concerns about the unfair ways in which Aboriginal people were being treated. His courage and continued fight for the rights of his people and those during Crystal Night tells me what sort of person he truly was. This, of course, is what I loved about him the most, and I feel proud that he is my great-grandfather. His sense of knowledge, his sense of knowing what was right and wrong in the treatment of mankind shone through in the actions that the man he truly was. Courage is a word I like to link to my great-grandfather. The English definition, quote, act one's beliefs despite danger or disapproval, unquote. There are also many other definitions depending on which way you choose to word. The original definition of courage, the root of the word courage is cor, the Latin word for heart. And in one of his earliest forms, the word courage meant to speak one's mind by telling all one heart. This is to me perfect for William Cooper, as I believe his actions were from his heart. As we discuss and unpack all elements of this year's theme, closely look at the word courage and know that you too can speak from your heart to ensure that we are all walking together to ensure that truth-telling is alive and honest for all of us to experience. I'm going to leave you with a quote, and it's familiar in our Sandhurst schools for which I work, and it's relevant not just for National Reconciliation Week, but it's a reminder to yourself. It is from Professor Michael McDaniel, a Wiradjuri man. Quote, my invitation to everyone is that in your everyday power, in your workplace with your regular authority, with your everyday resources, turn your mind occasionally to what you can do for the benefit of Aboriginal people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leonie, for the time you've taken to travel here and address us. I'm sure your words have inspired every single person in this room to continue to connect to the Indigenous people, just as they did when you addressed our group on the Yorta Yorta trip back in 2017. We're just so inspired and so grateful that you could make it today. Thank you so much.